Welcome to Biology Made Easy. In this lesson, we are discussing the relationship between habitat and ecological niche. Well, in this lesson, we will meet some terms that we want to explain first. We'll meet the term detritus. What is detritus? Is partly decomposing animals and plants, but especially plant material, partly decomposing. That is detritus. And then we'll meet the term aestivate. This term means the organism has become dormant, especially because of drought, dry weather. And I have this snail here. This is a living one. This other one in the short is also a snail living, alive, but it's covered its surface with a dry membrane and it's alive in it just to reduce its metabolic rate. So it's dormant in there just to keep alive with a very low metabolism. So that is aestivate. Organism goes through aestivation during some dry conditions. And then we'll also meet this term hibernate. So hibernate is also another term to show that the organism has gone into a dormant state and its metabolism has been reduced. And this happens when the organisms are in cold weather like snow. They hibernate, just like aestivate in drought or hot weather. So let's get into the meat of the topic. Habitat, what is it? This I have drawn as a habitat. It's a natural place, a place where an organism lives successfully and it has adaptations that enable it to live successfully. Adaptations, you can have morphological, physiological, or behavioral adaptations. Morphological, it's what you see. For instance, if you take a dog, it has legs to move about. Physiolocal, it sweats or salivates. Behavioral, it barks. And we can have a lot of examples. Now, what about a niche? A niche is a place where an organism stays or occupies and functions or perform its roles. Organisms can stay or occupy a place just to rest or sleep or hide from predators, escape harsh environment conditions, e.g. heat, drought, snow. And when they escape drought, they usually aestivate. And when they escape snow, they hibernate. Well, organism can occupy or stay in a place to incubate its eggs or give birth. When we talk about a niche, organism does not live in the place just to do things like these, but just to stay and rest, but also to perform its functions. So what are the functions that the organisms perform? That's what we are going to list now. So perform functions or roles. The functions or roles that organisms perform, some affect the abiotic or non-living part of the environment. For instance, functions that take up nutrients like air, water, mineral salts, organisms remove it from the environment. Or functions that put in nutrients like the air, water, mineral salts. And these are what we discussed in the natural cycles, right? Like carbon cycle, water cycle, nitrogen cycle. They show how organisms remove nutrients or put in nutrients into the environment, the natural cycles. So you can check from your notes about the natural cycles. So, organisms perform functions that affect the abiotic part of the environment and also functions that affect the biotic or living part of the environment These are the functions: feeding, reproduction, competition, predation, parasitism, mutualism. And you see that these are what is known as biological association. So basically, these are the functions that organisms perform in the environment or in the habitat. And when you are talking about the niche, you are talking about the place the organism occupies or stays and the functions or its roles in the environment. But when you are talking about habitat, you are only talking about the place where the organism stays. So here, place only. Here is place and role. Well, to explain things further about the niche, you can have an organism like this, a snail that is staying in detritus, as you can see. Now, this snail is staying in this detritus to escape the harsh temperatures of the day, and then during the night, the snail crawls away and moves to other parts of the habitat to feed on leaves, etc. So, for this snail, its niche is not only under the detritus here, but its niche is this whole place where it stays and functions, eating, producing feces, etc. that affect this environment. That is its niche. So we can say that with some of the organisms, the niche is one place where it stays and also functions. For instance, organisms like the woodlouse and then plants. You see, the woodlice lives in the detritus and right in the soil where there's plenty of detritus. That's where woodlice are. So if these are the woodlice, I have woodlice here, it means there's detritus here, and it will be in the detritus, eat the detritus, decompose it, break it into humus, and so it stays here and functions here. Then you have this plant sitting here. This is where this plant is staying and functioning. So for this plant, its niche is here, where it stays and functions. It has its roots to absorb nutrients. It has the leaves to produce water vapor, etc. So for this plant, its niche is here. That's its niche. For the woodlice, its niche is under the detritus here. So for some organisms, their niche is a place and function, the same place. So we have seen that one of the relationships between habitat and ecological niche is that habitat is just a place where organisms stays or lives, but the niche is the place and function. So it's here and it's functioning, and that is the niche. Now again, another relationship, a habitat has many niches. So we can have a habitat like this, and it will have a number of niches, and so a niche is a set of a habitat. So a habitat is a superset of a niche. That is it. Then you can also see that a habitat is permanently there. If this is a habitat, it's there as a habitat. But some niches are always there. Like if you have a plant like this plant is there day and night, and every season this species of plant is there in the habitat. So some niches are permanently there, all right, and functioning day and night and all seasons. Some organisms too can be permanently there, just like the habitat is permanently there. However, some niches function only during the day, so some niches are diurnal. The species or the organisms operate during the day. In the night, they are there, staying somewhere in the habitat with some small functioning, breathing, excreting. But during the day, it's moving all over the place, excreting, eating, etc. So some niches are diurnal, like lizards. And some niches are nocturnal. you can have an organism like this, snail or snake. During the day, it's resting somewhere. During the night, it's actively functioning all over the place. And so that niche functions at night, and it's nocturnal. You can have snakes, snails, and a lot of organisms. And then some niches are also seasonal. It means that different species appear on the same habitat at different seasons. So this habitat, you can have these plants here. When the weather is dry, these plants cannot survive, so it's off. When the weather is dry, some mosses will not be there, mushrooms will not be there, all right? So some niches are seasonal, whereas the habitat is always there. And then we also want to say that a habitat, this point, has different species. You see, different species of organisms in every habitat. And remember that each species forms a population. So in a habitat, there will be so many different species or different populations, and all the populations form a community in a habitat. But every species has its own niche. You have different species all over the place, but different species have their own niche. Now, if species share niche, like if there's a plant here and there's another plant here, they are sharing a niche, it means that the organisms can tolerate each other because they share the same niche, but they function at different times of the day. Some are nocturnal, some are diurnal. They can occupy the same niche at different times of the day. They can occupy the same niche also at different seasons because they will function or come around in different seasons. So when different species occupy the same niche, it means they can tolerate each other because they function at different times, or they appear at different seasons, or they function slightly differently. Like if there's a plant here and there's another plant very close to it here, the roots of this second plant, where it will absorb, is different from where these roots absorb. So these two plants can share almost the same niche because they are functioning at different levels or at different times. Otherwise, if different species share the same niche, there will be competition. And when there is competition, it's most likely that one organism will finally give way. So a habitat has so many different species, so many different populations, and different species that occupy the same niche function at different times or different seasons, or they function at different levels because they will absorb nutrients at different levels. Then it will work. So we've been able to enumerate numbers of differences or similarities between habitat and ecological niche. If the lesson has been useful, give us your likes and do subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.